This episode is brought to you by LaborFirst.
I'm Sean O'Brien, General President of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters.
Put your helmets on, buckle your chin straps. It's a full contact sport.
We're going to find out who has a better bad idea. We're in New York City today with episode of Better Bad Ideas. I've got Tom Gesualdi, who is the principal officer of Joint Council 16, covering 100,000 plus Teamsters that run New York City. Yes. And then we have Kevin McCaffrey, who's been a principal officer of Teamsters Local 707, and also a career politician, pretty much, right? The last 20 years.
We prefer elected official.
Elected official, yes, okay. It's like union boss versus
that's right, exactly.
Union principal officer. And what has your position been? What is it?
I'm currently the presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature.
Okay, great. And you are a Republican.
Yes, I am.
Card-carrying Republican, never ran from it, even though I would torture him at every union meeting that we have. But Kevin's been a long-time Teamster as well. How many years in the Teamsters Union?
Almost 47.
Okay, and how many for you?
43.
43, and I'm like the newbie. I've got 35 years, and feels like I've been in here for 50 years. But what is the state of New York City as it relates to unions? Great dynamic having a Republican with two Democrats here right now. But I think, we'll have a great talk about where we think the Democratic Party's going, what the Republicans have been saying they want to do for us, and also where's labor and all this stuff. So where are we with organized labor in New York City?
Right now in New York City, we're in a good position. We really are. We get a lot of work done. We get a lot of bills passed. They take us seriously. If I could talk about the mayor's race a little
Absolutely.
bit. We, from the primaries on, the Democratic primary, many candidates came forward, and every one of them reached out to Joint Council 16 to talk about their views and hear what our issues were. The only one that did not was the mayor's camp. But that's yesterday's news. I mean, we're really looking forward to sitting down with the mayor. I'm not sure if he understands the dynamics of Joint Council 16. We have 24 locals. We make New York City run. We deliver every product, every package, food, beer, soda, wine, fuel oil, you name it, we make it run.
And you built the city, have been building the city construction-wise.
And building it, construction in my local on top of it. You remember, Sean, back with COVID, we were deemed an essential workers, and we worked every day. Many members got sick. And, unfortunately, 5 years later, that title seems to be gone. But, I'm not sure if the mayor-elect understands the dynamics. When you look at, joint councils or district councils, if you're the carpenter or the laborer, it's one issue. We have 24 different issues, and each one is important to the local. So I got to navigate through that because their issue is the biggest issue, and rightfully so. So I want to really have a conversation with the mayor.
You sit from a different perch, right? Because you're a Republican, but you're a very, very moderate. Been a labor person your whole life. Like, what is New York City? What are the fears of Mamdani coming in? Because you're hearing all these accusations. The funny thing was, like, he's going to tax everybody, but they just shot that down, or you shot it down, or your people shot it down, right?
My people, yeah. We all got together and shot that down, yes.
So what is the future of New York City under him? I mean, is there a concern?
Well, there is a concern. Our members have to work somewhere. And sometimes if we chase business out of here, they've got nowhere to work. And the biggest problem we have, the biggest issue we face, is having an employer that can't afford to pay his bills. And we learned that with YRC and these other companies. But if you make it too difficult for people to do business here in New York City, they're going to leave. And so we need to find that balance. We need them to be able to pay the wages and the benefits that we need for our people to be able to stay living here in New York.
Are people leaving the city? I mean, I've heard a couple of rumors, you see, someone puts a press release out, or, you go down that rabbit hole of social media, and, NASDAQ supposedly has a headquarters already built in Dallas, Texas.
Yes.
And you're hearing the threats of like these millionaires and billionaires saying, once he's elected, we're out of here. We're going to go to Florida, Dallas, or I think it was Arizona was the third place. So have we seen anybody leave?
I don't know if we've seen anybody leave. Anecdotally, we hear about these reports, but I haven't heard anyone saying they're moving in. And that's the real difference. So the momentum seems to be shifting away. We'll know. Time will tell.
Now, Tommy, you both deal with politics very well. I mean, you know how to navigate the system, get a lot of stuff done for our members and many other union folks as well. But, you know, you heard this, let's tax the millionaires, let's tax the billionaires. We're going to raise taxes. We're going to have free transportation. Who pays for all this at that point in time?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, they're talking about the corporations paying for it. And like what Kevin said is true. We can't afford anybody to leave. I mean, the biggest detriment to us and our members is, you know, after COVID, when the city was running wild, restaurants closed, stores closed. You know, safety is one of the big issues from our members' standpoint. You know, that's...
You talk public safety?
Yeah. Our members voted for Donald Trump. We took a survey. I know the International you did too. And it wasn't so much that they liked Donald Trump. It was like they liked the views because they didn't like the way the city was going at the time under de Blasio. You know, crime was rampant, robbing stores, subways unsafe. They were afraid for their wives to go on the subways, their kids. And that was, you know, I had to talk with a lot of members and I said, you know, they may not be good for work. And their answer, every one of them individually said, you know, it's important work, but my family's well-being and safety comes first. And that's how the members resonated what went on there. And the concern, you know, we don't want to go back. And we hope that isn't the case because it is getting better. And as it gets better, like you said, Kevin, more work comes that way.
Well, I think there was a big controversy on defund the police. And, you know, I come from Boston, as you know, and regardless of what you think, you know, the police are necessary to keep law and order in the city. And again, you know, most people say we don't like cops, but you know what? Cops do keep people safe. And how do you defund an aggressive city like New York and try and keep the public safe? I mean, I know the governor, the mayor-elect Mamdani, you know, has been supportive of defunding the police. What is going to happen? I mean, look, you think about, he swung for the fence on the taxes, and I think it was shot down recently, right? The current governor said she's never going to agree to that, right? So that's a campaign promise. That's not going to happen. Is he going to be able to defund the police and put all these programs in place and keep the city safe? And what does that look like?
Well, police officers are leaving in droves. The sworn ranks are down significantly. Someone's hitting 20 years, they're gone. People were leaving even before 20 years. They said, I've had enough. And this is before we had this new initiative.
Like had enough with what?
Of working as a New York City police officer or a detective or in any one of the ranks. They're just saying, look, I've got to get out of here. You know, I live in Suffolk County and our police officers there, they don't leave. It's a good job. So we have a good farm system, we call it, from New York City Police Department. They come here. They come to our police department.
But are the police leaving because they're not getting the support of, you know, someone like Mayor Mamdani, or, you know, they just don't have the backing when they have to, you know, fight crime, so to speak. Everything's on a body camera. Everything is recorded. And there's more scrutiny when police are doing that. Is that one of the reasons why they're leaving? They don't have the backing of administrations?
I would say that body cameras are good. The police officer will tell you that because many times they're accused of things they've never done before. My son's a New York City police officer, he's a detective now, and he said when he was on the street, he said, I wish we had body cameras because there's a lot of accusations that are falsely made against them.
And here we are. We fight every day to not allow cameras out of trucks.
Keep them out of the trucks.
I mean, I was fighting with UPS during those negotiations saying, you invade their privacy enough. Leave them alone. Like, do you want to see them scratching their face or doing whatever? Well, I think I might have used something else, like scratching their balls or something. But
you may have.
Who knows?
You may have. But the outward-facing cameras, and Tom, you guys have them too. You know, it's more often than not, they've shown that it wasn't us that cut this.
It saved a lot of my members. Some, you know, Ready Mix especially. You know, today driving in the city with the bike lanes and the e-scooters, they're going up one ways. It's dangerous, and you know, accidents happen, and many cases where it shows that they just disregarded the light. They went through and actually saved the driver. It doesn't make him feel better, But the bottom line is it wasn't his fault. So it does help in certain cases.
I know we probably have out of local 237, Greg Floyd, one of our vice presidents on the board, great guy. He represents about 6,000 or 7,000 hospital police officers, right? And I know he was adamant about not endorsing Mamdani because he was a police officer. Now he represents, that's probably one of the biggest locals we have in the United States. And he's like, absolutely not. No, we can't allow someone to, take a swipe at the police. Do you think he's really going to do that? Or, I mean, there was some speculation that domestic violence, right? Which domestic violence is crazy, but they're not going to have police show up to the domestic violence. They're going to have social workers. That's what unarmed social workers.
Yeah, they're saying social workers.
Work
They're saying social workers, right?
So as part of the police reform package we passed in Suffolk County, everyone had to do it. It was a mandate. Governor Cuomo said we all had to pass police reform after George Floyd killings. So after that happened, we all had to pass police reform. As legislation, we had to do it. We have to have a social worker group available to say, hey, here's the situation. Do you want to go? Or do you want to come with us? More often than not, they don't want to be the first ones on the scene or even, show up later on, after everything's under control, they show up. But they cannot be the first responders. The police have to be and continue to need to be first responders. Those are very dangerous situations. My father was a New York City police officer. My two brothers were, and now my son is. And they always say the same thing. Some of the worst situations they walk into is domestic violence because one party will turn on you in a minute. You go to lock up someone and they put the handcuffs on. All of a sudden, you're hit by the head from with a frying pan and from the person who called the police on them.
So, like, you're having a fight, a couple's having a fight, and under what we're reading about and what we're hearing about, social work is going to come in and try and diffuse the situation, right? It's going to be impossible.
It is.
And you're putting the social workers at risk, and then you're trying to replace them with police with social workers, which is going to be, time will tell. I mean, look, I think to your point, when he takes over, he made a lot of promises, a lot of things that he said he was going to do. I haven't heard much about what his position is as far as development in the city, because development in the city is going to be important for us because we'll keep our members working. I mean, your members deliver freight, goods, and services. Our members, build the city. Yeah. And if there's no development going on, then there's going to be no work, which is going to be no deliveries. Where is he at with continuing to develop? I mean, New York City is constantly building. But if we want to halt that and focus on, people leaving here, how does that help us?
Yeah, I mean, development is a big issue for my local and the building trades. You don't need, from what the developers tell us, the real estate where they run everything, they don't need New York anymore. I mean, they're building in all the parts of the country. I'm more than sure their profit margin's bigger because they're dealing probably non-union. They want to be in New York. It's the mega capital, but they don't have to be here. And if they're going to get hit with all kinds of different taxes and, just to get passed to do work and permits, and it's the worst in the country, they say.
What do you mean, permitting?
Getting permitted, everything's a process, and the process takes forever. Whereas in other states, they get it done right away. So, they're building elsewhere. They still want to build here, but we don't know where that's going to be. One of the things is concerning and waiting to see with the mayor, about building is, who he installs in these agencies. There's a lot of agencies in New York City, Department of Transportation, EDC. They work hand in hand with us in the building trades on getting work out, project labor agreements. If he puts people in that don't have experience in New York, it's going to be a learning curve, and that's going to be a detriment to our members. If he puts people in that have experience, it'll make it go easier. Now, early on when de Blasio had gotten in, a lot of his agencies, he put people in that didn't even live in New York. They were young kids that maybe took, courses in urban development and whatnot, and they had no clue. And it took a long time for them to get their feet wet, and we suffered over it. We're hoping that doesn't happen again.
What's funny, de Blasio is a Boston guy.
Right.
So it was funny. I couldn't imagine someone coming from outside into the city of Boston, which we do have a mayor from Chicago, but, she worked in, government and everything else. But I mean, New York has to be extremely difficult to operate in New York City. And, you have to have people that know the city and know, how to navigate through it. And, it's funny, de Blasio was from Boston, and he called me up probably about a year ago. And, we really didn't support him at all because he kind of did some shitty stuff with unions and everything. But I will give him credit. Like he's like an advocate now fighting against AI and all this technology. So maybe if he did a little better job back then, but, I apologize. He's from Mass, but, you did have another mayor though that went to the same high school I went to, Bloomberg.
Did he really?
He graduated from the same
I
high
didn't
school.
know
Yeah.
You and maybe Bloomberg went to the same high school?
We did. Yeah, we did.
Okay.
Both thrive on raw intelligence, Kev.
I understand that now. Explains a lot.
But getting back to the development of the city, there's a lot of appetite for affordable housing. How does that affect us in the developments or developers coming here? I mean, housing is outrageous throughout this whole country, especially in New York City. How do we, convey the message to, the new mayor-elect and anybody else? Like, we need development, number one, right? We need to be able to fund affordable housing so that people have a place to live in the city. And we also have to, more importantly, maintain our wages and benefits. How do we navigate through that in the city? I mean, you're a legislator.
This episode is brought to you by LaborFirst, the leader in healthcare navigation and advocacy for plan sponsors, union members, and retirees. Navigating healthcare isn't easy, especially when it comes to Medicare, and it shouldn't fall on our retirees' shoulders alone. That's where LaborFirst comes in. They work one-on-one with members to help them understand their benefits, resolve issues, and get the care they've earned. From answering tough questions to fixing billing problems, LaborFirst is in your corner every step of the way. No call centers, no runaround, just healthcare advocates who care. LaborFirst was founded by a proud Teamsters son and grandson. For over 60 years, his father and grandfather led Teamsters Local 837, now Local 107 in Philadelphia, with pride, purpose, and grit. That same union spirit runs through everything LaborFirst does today. Now, hundreds of union health plans trust LaborFirst as a true partner, delivering results, supporting members, retirees, and never forgetting who they're working for. When it comes to protecting what your members have earned, LaborFirst stands with you. Visit LaborFirst.com to learn more. That's LaborFirst.com. This episode is brought to you by Catches Law Group, proud advocates for injured workers and their families since 1986. If you've been hurt on the job, navigating the workers' comp system can feel like fighting an uphill battle. That's where Catches Law comes in. They've recovered over $3 billion for hardworking people just like you, and they don't back down when your rights are on the line. They know what it means to stand shoulder to shoulder with unions and workers across the country, because at Catches Law, it's not just about compensation, it's about justice. To learn more, visit catcheslaw.com. That's KECHES law.com. And I've got to tell you, I've single-handedly witnessed how hard Catches Law works on behalf of injured workers. They make certain that they provide the protection and security for not only the workers, but the families that are affected as well. When our members get hurt, we want justice, and Catches Law delivers justice. Please visit catcheslaw.com. That's KECHES law.com.
Yeah, and it's always a difficult situation because you have to subsidize affordable housing. Without a doubt, we do it in Suffolk County. We have money we set aside to subsidize affordable housing. It's the only way you can get built. I'm concerned about developers wanting to come in here when you tell them that you're going to have to freeze rents. Look, here's some great ideas. Who doesn't like the idea of the buses being free, rent freezes, and all these great things that he says? Sure, that's
but who's going to pay for it?
Who's going to pay for it?
Right, and how are we going to negotiate? Like, we've got, how many members out of 237 that probably about 25,000 members out of Local 237?
Oh, yeah.
Right,
sure.
So how are we going to negotiate the best contracts in the transportation industry for the Teamsters? Well, we don't know who's funding. I mean, let's think about it. if you're going to give away free transportation, I just read a number, $700 million it would cost. So how is that going to affect the wages and benefits of the people that are driving the buses, driving the trains, and providing all this stuff? Where is that revenue going to come to support a collective bargaining agreement, right? Because New York's a complete union city.
Yeah.
Where is that money going to come from? And, it's great. Yeah, we're going to have free everything. But what's going to happen to those jobs? Are we going to go to the bargaining table and say, listen, we gave it away free, so there's no more revenue coming in. So, you got to share in the losses as well. How's that going to affect us?
It's easy. You tax the rich, you tax the corporations more than they're paying before, and expect them to just stay here and take it.
But I think that's already went out the window this week, wasn't it? Or this past week? Where doesn't the taxes or the increase in taxes have to get okayed at Albany?
Yes, the state legislature has to approve any tax increase.
Didn't that already get shot down? And the governor said she wouldn't, allow that to happen.
This is a crazy business in government and politics. And
what do you mean? Like a politician can say something one day, and then fall back and say I was only kidding?
I've heard that.
Promises made, promises broken.
I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah.
But anything can happen.
You talk about the $700 million was lost in fare beating, and congestion pricing went into effect, and that's supposed to generate $1 billion. The talk was early on, square away to $700 million, then we'll see where it's at, but they didn't do that. So you talk to people, half the people don't pay when they get on, they just get on. But, the congestion pricing from my local, it's good because it goes to the MTA, which is capital programs. But in general, which is infrastructure, that part's good. Right. But everywhere else with the Teamsters is a problem because even with my companies, because what happens is, it's $9 to go through the zone, and a lot of our members work off hours, and you just can't take mass transit at 3:00 in the morning. They got to drive, and it's a big burden on them. But where it really became a big burden is with the employers. It's $23, I believe, every time they're in the zone. And it was led to believe that it's a one-shot deal, $23, and the employers understood that. We find out now, and they can't get no traction on it, it's $23 every time you enter the zone. So you look at Ready Mix. All our plants are in Brooklyn or Queens. There's no plants in Manhattan. They were barred years ago. So you're doing a project and you're coming in from Queens and you make 4 or 5 loads a day. It's, $150 per truck per day times 30 trucks. Who's paying for that? The employee, the developer said, that ain't my problem, that's your problem. So that affects us when we sit down to negotiate for wages. And, that was wrong. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, but now you go back.
What is that? Just so the audience understands. You come into the 5 boroughs, right?
If you come into the zone anywhere from the Battery up to 96th Street, river to river, you get hit with the $9 fee or $23 per shot with a truck. If you're just going through the city and you're on the FDR Drive or the West Side Highway and you don't go out, you don't pay. But everybody does, and it's what it is. So the employers are really concerned, with rising costs, with insurance and everything else they got to go through. This burden they thought was a one-time deal, and it's not. And it's going to affect us in negotiations because nobody's paying that money. They got to pay it, and the bills went through the roof.
What about we've heard that there's an appetite to keep trucks and commercial vehicles out of the city of New York, downtown.
It's crazy.
Like, how are you going to pick up your trash? How are you going to deliver products? Think about it. We have UPS, our largest employer. Then we have Cisco, US Foods. We've got the rubbish that needs to be picked up a couple times a day. And you want to exclude commercial trucks from coming into the city. Who's going to do that work, and how are these goods and services going to be provided? And is that an actual thing?
It actually was a real issue a few years back when I sat down with the Department of Transportation, and they, besides truck zones and streets with no trucks and bike lanes, which made it hard enough, they didn't want trucks in the city from 7 a.m. to like 6 p.m. So I said, it's impossible. How do you just use construction for my own local? We'll do everything at night. So I said, well, who's going to pay the night differential to all the? Yeah, they looked at you like, what are you talking about?
They don't realize that our contracts.
And then the other thing they brought up, which is really, we don't want trucks idling. And I just read an article recently where there's like two guys, and one's a doctor. They make $1 million a year. They film it, a truck item for 15 minutes, and they get paid like $75 a shot. And I tried to explain that with ready mix, when you're doing a monolithic pour, you can't shut the truck off. It's got to be on. And they're looking at you. And I said, so you have to do that. And the truck's got to park. And this one young lady said, no, we're going to keep the trucks, the ready mix trucks in the outer boroughs. And when they're ready, we're going to radio them in. I said, the traffic is like, and that's what you dealt with early on. So it did go away from that. But like I said before, I'm worried that if that comes back, it's a major
because
problem.
we've been hearing all these, rumors that, under this new administration coming into the city, that, stuff like no taxes, a tax to rich, exclusion of commercial vehicles in New York City. It's like, all right, you said e-bikes. I don't think an e-bike can actually pick up a dumpster, right? An empty trash can.
I was being facetious. Yeah.
No way, not you.
Yeah.
Not you. No. So what is your role like now? I know you're going to be termed out real soon. Mm-hmm. You were a state assemblyman?
No, a county legislator.
County legislature. What is that like?
So so we have 1.5 million people in Suffolk County, and there's 18 legislators. We each represent about 100,000 people each. And we pass laws in Suffolk County, in charge of the police, the fire services. So
that'd be the equivalent of like the Boston City Council for me.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Right. How many people? 18, you said?
There's 18 legislators, and we're 1.5 million people.
And you were first elected when?
To the legislature in 2013. Before that, I served as a deputy mayor in Lindenhurst for almost 24 years.
Right.
Yeah.
And you still always ran Local 707. Yep. You came up right through the ranks as a driver at Yellow or where?
No, not Yellow, Roadway.
Roadway. Well, it became one.
Experience.
Became one organized crime syndicate.
Yep.
Right?
I believe that,
And 40, how many years in the Teamsters?
47.
47. And the majority of your career has been as a principal officer and a leader. What do you see the effect of, all these regulations put in, whether it's clean emissions, whether it's, no commercial vehicles on certain streets? Do you think that is a real threat to the Teamsters Union?
Oh, it is. I mean, there's a lot of well-meaning people think that, we need to reduce pollution and things like that in the city and congestion. That's great. But how are people going to get the food that they're going to eat, the things that they order on Amazon or wherever they order online? Stuff all has to come, even going to the stores that they go to. Those goods have to get there somehow. And it all comes trucks. And that's the problem, is people are saying, we don't want trucks in here. You can try and change the time that you do it. Many of our businesses do that right now. Mm-hmm. But the problem is they want to be nighttime deliveries. As Tom mentioned, it's additional cost, and people have to be open. What if there's a store or a warehouse that needs to take those goods in, but they're not open at 3:00 in the morning? That's going to be a problem. These people are well-meaning, but you need to think about this. As a legislator, I think about that. I sit there and say, well, what's the impact going to be on business? How's this going to impact the economics behind this? There's great things that we want to do, but there are also adverse impacts to every decision that is made through a legislator.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a unique background because, being a Republican, back in the day, 25, 30 years ago, even though the Republicans right now are trying to fancy themselves, they want to be for the working people, you were actually a Republican that had a different view because you lived the blue-collar life. You advocated on behalf of blue-collar workers. What is your opinion right now, the Republican Party versus the Democratic Party?
Well, the problem is that it's not easy being in the middle. And I know you fashion yourself as a moderate Democrat, but at the end of the day, it's not easy because the right side and the left side is what's controlling these parties. So no matter what you do, you're going to get beat up. But I stick to my guns. I know where I want to be. I support the environment. I support working men and women. I stand up for law enforcement. I make sure that all people are represented and defended. They have a right to live where they are and be who they are. And I stand by that. But I would never change my colors in terms of who I am and stand up for working men and women. I was a Teamster and truck driver before I became an elected official.
Were you a Republican your whole life?
I was born that way.
So you were born zip code, right? Because of your zip code?
My uncle was a state Supreme Court judge, so my family was involved in Republican politics for a long time.
Now, Tom, you've been a lifelong Democrat like myself,
Yes.
right? Always will be, unlike some other people at this table. But you've got to admit, the way when we grew up, and our parents, the Democrats were the party for working people.
That's
the
correct.
Democrats were carrying our water all the time, and then that script flipped, right?
Yes.
And it's become a party that, obviously I'm lifelong Democrat, but it's a party that hasn't really demonstrated outside of, some legislation, which we'll talk about. They really haven't advocated on behalf of working people.
Yeah.
You look at 2008, 2009, when Obama was elected president, we had a full Democratic House, Senate, and President. And our biggest issue at that time, organized labor, was the Employee Free Choice Act. Couldn't get that passed. A lot of these trade deals that were made in the 90s that saw a lot of our work go overseas, and, child labor was doing labor that Americans did, middle-class labor. And that was all driven by Democrats, but yet we continued to support them. We continued to, listen to them and be hopeful that they were going to do it. Did you see that switch?
Yeah. I see more and more we were taken for granted. True, we got a lot of things done, but there could have been so much more done. And it wasn't. And I think they just felt that where they're going to go. Mm-hmm. And, something that we did, and you do with the International, is we support anybody that supports our views, our issues. We don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, or independent. If you support what we do and you actually show that you do, we will support you. That was not a favor of a lot of people didn't like that, but it works. And, looking at the members, we have Drive, which is a contribution from the International. You hear through the years, I don't want to be in it no more because I'm a Republican, and they just give the Democrats or whatever it may be. And a lot of people left for that reason. I want my money to go where I want it to go. You don't hear that much no more, because what's happening now is they're seeing through you and the International that we are supporting. We don't care who you are. If you support our initiatives, we're going to support you. And I think that makes the member feel really proud, because they know that their money's going to something that's going to help them.
Well, the other thing too, it's like, you've seen a lot of these bad trade deals, right? You've seen a lot of our jobs go overseas, and now we have an administration that, wants to tariff all these countries because, we lost a lot of jobs and everything else. And look, the tariffs, there's a lot of debate whether they're good or bad. And our position has always been, look, if the tariffs bring back work, the tariffs put people back to work and create a truly middle class. Like, you go to Ohio, and I go to Ohio a lot. That was like Ohio, Pennsylvania, the steel mills. Those were modest, but necessary middle class jobs. They kept a lot of families with homes, able to educate their children. You go to those areas right now where those mills once were, there's nothing. It's desolate. And that drives down the economy. That drives down education. So I look at it from this perspective. Hey, if we're going to bring back traditional American work that went overseas, and we're going to put people back to work, because the other thing people, I think, take for granted is this threat with AI. AI is going to wipe out, for the first time, you're going to see it wipe out, white collar jobs. Accountants, even doctors, lawyers. And where are those folks going to go? So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I got to tell you, a lot of these policies and procedures that our own Democrats are fighting against, they once were advocating for them 20 years ago. Like, if you look at Chuck Schumer giving a speech on China in 1996 on YouTube, he's saying exactly what people are saying right now from the other side. So it's like, when did that dynamic switch? And how can you, if you're on YouTube, go against, and it's, I get it. It's whatever Trump says, people want to go against him. But how do you go against those policies that you once were advocating for, like immigration?
Yeah. So it's a strange dynamic. Democrats always viewed as the supporting working people, Republicans, the big corporate guys. But I need to remind you, but you know about this as well. One of the biggest detriments to the Teamsters Union was deregulation of the trucking industry. 1980, and that was brought to us by Jimmy Carter and Ted Kennedy, the senator from Massachusetts, and they were,
and signed on by Joe Biden when he was a senator.
Yeah, you're right. Right. So these are the things that has decimated our industry in the trucking industry. I know in my local, which was mostly in that freight business. So that has really decimated us. But you've seen over time, you have seen a change, and our members, as Tom pointed out, are seeing that, and they're saying, you know what, we have a president now that is standing up for working men and women. He's saying, look, we need to make more stuff in this country, and I'm going to do this by imposing these tariffs. He wants to do things with steel and the auto industry, even though they were not
motion picture industry.
The motion picture industry. He wants to be able to tariff them if they're making their pictures overseas because it's cheaper for them to do it. Well, it's cheaper because you know what, the people in that industry and that are represented by Teamsters Local 817 and other locals around the country, they make a little more money. So let's bring them back here.
Right. No, and the thing is, it's like two things. Like the Democrats, they're pissed off at someone like me right now because we're calling balls and strikes. Now, we go back to the Employee Free Choice Act, where it was basically the PRO Act. It was like the first introduction of the PRO Act. Got no legs, got no support, didn't even get brought out for debate. Then we get the PRO Act, which had every bell and whistle that would make it very, very easy to organize, but it was never going to be embraced bipartisan. And it was going to be used as a weapon to introduce it from Democratic piece of legislation, have the Republicans say, we'll never agree to that. Democrats say, see, they're not for working people. That never got introduced. But we've been working prior to even the election, bipartisan with a lot of Republican and Democratic senators on this Faster Labor Contracts Act, which would basically be something that both sides can embrace that would be good for working people and would be able to organize, but more importantly, get a first contract. And it's funny, Cory Booker's been great as far as supporting that with Josh Hawley and many other Republicans and Democrats. And, it's funny, some of the Democrats that wanted to issue the PRO Act to weaponize that issue have not even committed to sign on to the bill. And I thought after the election, I really was hopeful that there would be a reset. Like, all right, we lost our base. And the Teamsters, I can speak for the Teamsters, 65% of our members, they weren't necessarily voting for Trump. They were voting Republican change, right? And it's like, all right, maybe there would be a reset. And I was hopefully optimistic that, all right, by what the work we've been doing, the speech that we gave at the RNC, that it would have opened people's eyes to say, hey, let's reset and let's figure out what we need to do. And by people like criticizing the Faster Labor Contracts Act because it's been bipartisan support, it's like you're not demonstrating you want to be the party for working people like democratically. And then conversely, the Republicans, they've said a lot of things, how they want to do all this stuff for us. Well, let's start doing it. Let's prove that you really want to do that. So both sides really have, Democrats, I think, have some redemption they need to pay. And the Republicans, if they're going to talk about, they want to be the party for working people, well, let's pass some legislation that is going to actually help working people. Let's look at bankruptcy reform. We haven't touched bankruptcy reform in years. And every time a company goes out of business, even though they may be double-breasted or whatever the case may be, we are the last line in creditors to get our pension money and our health and welfare and anything else. Meanwhile, while they gouge all the money that's left, like you look at Yellow, we lost 22,000 members. I got crushed over that because, people don't want to hear the real story, but you lived it and you lived it. We gave back $5 billion in concessions since 2008 and 9. And that company just kept going down a rabbit hole of, bad management, bad acquisitions, and our members were paying the price. And when we were campaigning in 21, we would spend a lot of time at Yellow Freight and we'd talk to members who have been there 45 years saying, hey, I was going to retire, but that concession set me back in my pension. I couldn't retire 10 years ago, so I'm working that much longer. Please, we cannot have another contract like that. Meanwhile, Yellow got a $700 million gift from the government under the first Trump administration, basically flushed that down the toilet. And then they got some funding from Apollo, $600 million. They had a lot of debt, yet they came to us and they wanted more and more concessions. And our members couldn't take it. So we're like, hey, you do what you got to do. They filed bankruptcy, blame us. Meanwhile, they took all their stocks and all their bonuses 6 months prior to coming to meet with us. So like we got blamed the same way. We put Yellow Freight out of business. No, Yellow Freight put themselves out of business, but they took all they had coming to them. When I talk about the executives and everybody that was entitled to it, I mean, it's sad. But my point to all this is like, this legislation that was introduced in 1980, we lost 400,000 jobs in the Teamsters, and it was like a template to deregulate other industries, right? So it wasn't just the Teamsters that were hurting. And during the election, it was great because, everybody was saying, we fixed your pensions. Chuck Schumer pointed his finger in my face one time and said, we fixed your pension. I'm like, yeah, you should have. You broke them.
Right.
You broke them. What do you mean I broke them? I'm like, look, you guys passed deregulation, bipartisan legislation, deregulate trucking industry. We lost 400,000 jobs, which means good companies went into bankruptcy, couldn't make contributions. They didn't pay their withdrawal liability that they're required under federal law. So these pension funds have been continuously getting distressed and distressed and distressed, all because of legislation that you passed. And I said, it's like no different than I'm playing hockey in 1980 and my mother in front of my mother's house, and I break her window. And then 40 years later, I decide to fix that problem that I created. And should my mother give me accolades for a problem that I created? So, they did fix it and we're very grateful, but it's the right thing to do. Don't put a gun to our head and saying we did this for you. You had to do it for us because you caused the problem. And people don't realize that.
Yeah. Well, I lived that YRC nightmare. They killed our pension fund. But they were put in a position, these pensions were built on a regulated industry, and then they pulled the rug out, and slowly over time, one by one, these companies went out, and then it was the next one, then it was the next one, then it was the mom and pops, then the big corporations, Consolidated Freightways, and the list goes on. And and that's really what caused our problems for us. And they did have to fix it, but I do have to give a shout out to Chuck Schumer. He worked very close. I know you hate to hear this.
No, listen.
But as a Republican,
I call balls and strikes. But he had no choice. He had to do it.
I understand. But I can tell you, for my local that was really in bad shape. We were on the brink of running out of money, and eventually we did. Every time there was a bill that came forward to try and help fix it, he would say, make sure
no doubt
707 was included in that fix. So I got to.
Yeah. So every time every time I see him, and look, I try and be respectful. One time he did stick his finger in my face on my building. I fixed your pensions. And I'm like, you broke them. You should fix them. But he always says, Kevin McCaffrey, 707. I took care of them. And I'm like, all right, he must have pictures of Kevin doing something like.
Yeah, no, just the fact that I'm the presiding officer of the Suffolk County Legislature as a Republican, it's good to be friends with.
No, absolutely, and I think that's a great example of what we're trying to do. All kidding aside, is we can have difference of opinions, Republican versus Democrat, anything else. That's the beauty about being American. It's the greatest country in the world. You have the best freedoms, and you can have dialogue, debate. But at the end of the day, there is nothing wrong with working together to solve problems.
Look, you remember when I still do go to Joint Council 10, and you were the principal officer of Joint Council 10, and you'd always give me this gracious introduction of, you'd allow me to speak in front of your delegates and talk about being an elected official, and you'd give me a great introduction of, I don't know why we invited him here, he's a Republican, and all these other things.
For money and
always ask for money. And then I would stand up and say, Sean, it's not about the letter after your name, it's about how you stand up for working men and women.
100%.
And then when I was watching Republican convention and you were speaking there, you stole that line. So
I did not steal that line.
I said it so many times, and you probably said it a little better than I did, of course. But
it wasn't exactly what you said, but it was probably close.
Very close.
I mean, if you want to sue me for whatever.
No. I'm happy to share
these Republicans. These Republicans like litigation. So let's talk about Schumer and the recent shutdown. Well, let's talk about the whole shutdown scenario. As you know, from day one, we took a position as an international union that this shutdown is bad for the country, but more important, it's bad for working people. And, I've often asked this question of both Republicans and Democrats. Whose fault was this shutdown?
Listen, this was a clean CR.
Here comes the politician.
This was a clean CR. There was no reason to shut down the government over it. This happened years ago when Obama was president, and he was saying, look, this is a clean CR. You need to pass it. This isn't the way to extort legislative changes. And that's exactly what they were doing. And whether they were valid or not in terms of, look, the subsidies for Obamacare, should they be phased out? Yeah, maybe, not just cut off. And should we have a discussion about that?
But weren't they going to be phased out anyways, regardless of anything going on? That was just a COVID policy put in place that was going to sunset December 31st.
As a union leader, all right, you give something to somebody and you say, hey, this is only temporary, and you take it back, they're going to say, hey, not so fast.
Yeah, no, you get used to it.
Yeah, you get used to it, and that's exactly what happened. So I think there needed to be a phase-in. But should we have shut down the government over that? Absolutely not.
I mean, you think about, well, again, whose fault was it? You didn't answer that question.
Well, it was the Democratic senators who voted against it.
And I guarantee you have the same thought process I do on that one, because that same clean CR that was passed in March, right? Was the same one that they've been it got voted on about 14 or 15 times prior to this. And, I understand leverage. We deal with leverage every single day, right? Yeah. And we need that leverage. So, do you fault a Schumer for leveraging that issue? Because he got beat up when he signed the last CR.
Yep.
And that's when, AOC is going to run against you. She's going to take your job. And so there was a lot of speculation that he was running scared or didn't want to deal with the constituency was pushing back on him after he signed the CR in March. But, if we've been doing it so long, and again, get back to having conversations. All right, look, we agree this may be good or bad for the country, this healthcare policy. But to your point, like when you cut something right off, it's a problem, right? So, I'm interested in what you see, Tom, from your side, because, you're a Democrat. And I'll be honest with you, I think the Democrats overplayed their hand in this one. And the worst part was you had the longest shutdown in history, and working people were having to go to work, not getting paid. People were furloughed, 900,000, I think it was total. And those are the people that, probably, we're looking at this going, all right, this country's not going to shut down. We're going to be okay. It's just leverage posturing. But after 42 days, when you're going to work, not getting paid, and or you're not going to work, you're furloughed, that's some serious shit. And then you're shutting off. It's affecting, the SNAP that a lot of people, there's a lot of good people that deserve, depend on that and deserve it. There's a lot of people that know the system that don't deserve it either, right? So what is your thoughts on the shutdown, and whose fault do you think it was?
You got to blame the Democrats, like Kevin said, really. But, you look at it, the people shouldn't be, the workers shouldn't be the victims. And, the air traffic control is down. A lot of people live week to week, especially with the economy that's there. And after 1, 2, 3 weeks, it gets difficult. I could just imagine if our members were affected by it where they weren't working. It'd be chaos. It really would be. No matter how much money they make, everybody still almost lives week to week. And once you miss the second and third week of getting paid, it gets rough. It's just a bad system because the victims are the working class, and that's not right.
Absolutely, 100%. And the thing is, I travel every week, 3-4 times per week. I'm in 3 different states or 4 different states, and I'm in airports all the time. And I could tell you my experience was, and I always, when I see someone, even prior to the shutdown or anything else, like a TSA worker, I'll go through that line. I say, I really appreciate you keeping us safe, because I sit on a Port Authority board, Logan Airport, and I know how important security is. I know how important that first line of defense is the TSA workers, right? And I could tell you, as this shutdown went on, right, you could see the difference, the demeanor changing to a point where you could tell the TSA people were frustrated. You could tell that after you get through the TSA, you have the gate agents, the people that work for the airlines who are basically, they're the punching bag for everything that goes wrong with every traveler. So you can see the air traffic controllers and the flights getting delayed and canceled. It was a very, very volatile time. which is awful because, you know, the worst thing for me was our military. I mean, we publicize everything so much, right? And you have so much going on in the world, you know, with this conflict overseas and everything else. And when you are publicly saying, hey, we're not going to be able to pay our military people, isn't that a sign of like we're vulnerable as a country, national security? So that's where I was very concerned. And then I went to a meeting at the White House with the vice president asked me to go to a round table with all the unions in the aviation, and you know, he made a couple CEOs from the airlines come in there, and you know, we frankly had a discussion on what needs to happen. And you know, I was asked to speak at the press conference, and I basically just called on both sides to say, you need to end this. You know, sign the clean CR, get back to the table, and negotiate. And ironically, 2 days later, that horrific crash with the UPS plane happened.
Yeah.
And I thought, I thought people would look at that, and it was no fault of air traffic control. It was no fault of the UPS mechanics that, or the pilots or anybody else. But I thought that would be something that would snap people back to reality and say, we just talked about how vulnerable air traffic safety is. Like, I thought that would have been like, all right, come on, let's come together and end this. Because look, we've had some terrible tragedies over our lifetime. And the one thing that, and being in New York City, you know, 9/11, we could never forget that. But do you remember how both political parties and people just came together?
Yep.
I felt that was going to happen there, and I was a little disappointed it didn't.
Yep.
People even drove nice after that, right? They were courtesy on the road, and you know, and we came together. There truly was a sense, you know, that we came together. And after that, TSA was born, you know, and we really didn't have that type of structure. You know, you had to take your shoes off now, and you got to limit your liquids and things like that. At the end of the day, I think we feel a little bit safer flying. But you know, we talked about the air traffic controllers a lot, but none of those TSA workers were getting paid either.
No.
And they are the first line of defense for us and getting on those planes. But it's really a tragedy that we couldn't get it together. But look, it wasn't all the Democrats. I know you had
John Fetterman was great. And I'll tell you, it was funny, like John Fetterman, and he's getting beat up over it. And that's the worst part. Like, there was a time when you could have your opinion no matter what, whether someone agreed with it or not. And hey, that's his opinion. He or she's entitled to it. Whatever. Now it's like, it's venom. It's just venom. If you disagree or you give your opinion that's not popular, then, you know, you're a piece of shit. You're no good. You're a traitor. Yep. And it's like, we're not traitors. We are calling balls and strikes. Like, let's get people back to work. Let's get back to the table and let's negotiate a solution for everybody. And Fetterman was great. I mean, and he is you know, people make fun of him because of the way he dresses. He's a massive human being, by the way. But I'll tell you, he was never wavered once on his position, never has. And he's like, look, let's just sign this clean CR and let's get people back to work. Let's get them the benefits that they want. He was great. I mean, I talked to Senator Kaine last week. I called him up, and you know, Senator Kaine represents Virginia, and that's where the majority of the government employees live. So he's living this nightmare. And I got to tell you, I said to him, and him and I have a difference of opinions on certain things, because at one time he said, I really love Amazon. They're a great company, put people to work. And of course, you know how we feel about that, but it's like anything else. I called him up. I said, hey, look, all due respect, I respect you for what you did, because, you know, what you did is what we've been saying all along, is like, look, I represent a constituency who allows me the privilege to represent you. You had to do what was in the best interest of those people. He goes, absolutely, Sean. He goes, you know, the majority of my constituency are federal workers, and they were furloughed and or having to go to work, not getting paid. So you've got to, and you know, like anything else, there's going to be penance to be paid for those folks those 8 that went over and voted. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, but it was the right thing to do. And
100%.
Again, government, I pride myself on doing the right thing. You know, whether it be not always taking the same party line that other people do, but I feel comfortable in my position, especially with working men and women. You know, Tom and his local have been great supporters of mine, because I support them. And you stay true to your colors. You can't go wrong.
So the moral of your story you just said right there is that you can have whatever letter associated with your name, but you can also represent many diverse constituencies that
Yeah.
like working people, like business, like whoever, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I consider myself an environmentalist. I support the windmills. I'm getting solar put in my house today. I'm going all out.
I like the combustible engine, buddy. I like pollution.
And I do have an electric car in the household.
Do you really?
Yeah, I can't drive. You can't have. It can't be your only car.
You know what? You learn something new. I like the combustible engines. I like mechanics being able to work on a car.
Yes,
still.
exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want to plug my car in, but to each their own, right?
Yeah, it's different, and so you need to find balance in life. That's all I'm saying.
Getting back to Fetterman, listening to your podcast with him, it was refreshing to hear a politician say, I don't care what my side says. I do what I feel is right for the Americans. That's what I'm elected to do.
Right.
I think if more political figures did that, this country would be in better shape.
Oh, I tell you, it was he called balls and strikes, and he's probably going to pay for it. I mean, poor guy tripped and fell like 2 days later, and got like 25 stitches. But he's funny, He actually brought in a picture. It's funny, you just don't know, right? He brings.
You showed me. He
brings a picture into to the podcast, right? And it's a picture of him in a UPS truck driving it. And December of 1994, he was working out of a facility, I think in Princeton, New Jersey, as seasonal help. And I'm like, oh, you got to autograph that for me, So, no, it was great. What do you think about AI? What's your fears of AI? You're obviously, you saw what happened with the big, beautiful, a big bad bill, however anybody wants to classify it, where there was a push to not allow states to regulate AI for 10 years. And thankfully, we beat that back, and the Teamsters led the charge on that.
Yeah.
And it was funny, Senator Ted Cruz introduces that, that legislation, that piece of it, right? And he voted with everybody else to not limit states from having any type of regulation on not regulating AI. So what are your thoughts on AI?
Listen, AI is coming. I mean, it's here right now. I mean, you go on your phone, you look something up, and instantaneously you get all kinds of information, more information than you ever got before. Sometimes you go down a rabbit hole with that, asking for more information, and once in a while you have to say stop. But what is the impact going to be on the Teamsters and on our jobs and the whole economy? I think it needs to be regulated. We need to take a look at where is it helpful, where is it. It's like computers. Computers obviously eliminated jobs. Where the world is changing. It's here. It's going to be here. But I think we need to regulate it in a manner in which it doesn't have an adverse impact on workers and on our economy.
What do you think about that, Tom?
I agree with Kevin on that. AI is good, but the part that bothers me the most is they publicize like once we get this done, it's going to take so many jobs away.
Billboard this morning when I stayed in Manhattan. Billboard this morning said, why not? Something to the effect of AI. It's great. Why are you wasting time and money on employees? Or something to that effect.
And where do these people go to work? And you got too many people just looking at it like this is a great thing. But where do these people get jobs? How does that affect the economy?
I think
people
don't think about. I think we're a society of convenience now, right? So we hit that button. We want that service yesterday, right? Yeah. And I think we're a society of convenience. I don't think people are thinking like long-term effect on what this convenience is going to do, this technology, to jobs. And I know we've been focused on protecting jobs and or creating jobs as a result of technology or efficiencies. And we've been dealing with it for decades in many different industries. But there is a appetite where I don't think people are going to realize how bad this can be. And people ask me all the time, are you against AI or technology, or are you against efficiencies? And we're not. The problem is we have to come out against a lot of these efficiencies, a lot of these technologies, AI, because the problem is we're not consulted during the design phase of the technology and or the AI and what effect it's going to have on our jobs. So, I always tell people, we don't want to be an impediment to technology. We don't be an impediment to efficiencies that are going to make our members' jobs that much easier. We want to be part of the solution, and we don't want to be consulted after implementation, right? And I always tell people, we're not against, technology. I mean, you think about where we come from. We were horse and buggy. delivering
right.
goods and services with horses and wagons, right? Combustible engine comes in or the engine comes in. I'm sure we were horrified,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you were there, so you tell me.
Well, they went to the hard road battalions into it.
But you know what I mean? It's like, so we can evolve with technology.
Sure.
And I think there's a great opportunity to create jobs as a result of this technology. But we just have to have a seat at the table and demand a seat at the table to retrain our members if their jobs are affected by technology and or find other opportunities for them to perform a job in a career. I mean, we still have to have people that go to work and know that they're going to have a career where they're going to be able to retire 30 years from now.
Look, and that can happen. You look at accountants. When spreadsheets first came out, they said, oh, this is going to put the accountants out of business. We have more accountants than we ever had before. I think it's going to create efficiencies to make businesses more productive and profitable so they can pay our employees, better wages and benefits. Look, let's go back to recently in the last 10 or 15 years, Easy Pass. Remember we used to have toll collectors? Now you couldn't imagine life where you don't just go right through a toll booth and you'd have to go to the toll booth, give the guy the change or whatever, or and they were always so pleasant in the toll booth too, right?
Well,
That was Teamsters Local 72. They lost a lot of members.
But again, perfect example. 2008, they put these gantries up. They call them gantries to eliminate the toll, right? And when you have relationships politically and you have influence, like for us, I negotiated that whole deal for the whole DOT in Massachusetts, where we created jobs for these folks that were losing their jobs in the tolls, and we got jobs that are going to maintain the technology, maintain the gantries, do all this stuff. Anybody that was displaced would get a job within 25 miles. So there's opportunity, because if you're sitting at that table, you can identify opportunities to put people to work.
Right. And just like I said with the toll collectors, they saw it coming. The Easy Pass came in. And look, they're in better jobs. They're not sitting there smelling, inhaling, exhaust fumes all day and being out in the elements. And that's the key, is be able to identify the jobs that are going to be impacted by AI and find other work for them, whether it be creating, different functions for that and different, platforms for AI to be used. And if you're in that position where you're doing a repetitive function, you need to be prepared to be able to find a different way to make a living.
The thing that's scary for me is the political nature, especially from the Democratic Party in states like Colorado, Illinois, and California with Newsom, who, by the way, him and I do not like each other. But, they say they're for the working people. They say they want to protect jobs and build, blue collar jobs, yet they're vetoing bipartisan legislation that's put in front of them to require a human operator in commercial vehicles. Right. And it's like, how can you? I had the conversation with the governor of Colorado before he vetoed it, and I said, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, Sean, don't worry about it. I've been with the Teamsters my whole career. I just can't be with you on this one. I go, well, this is the one. And I said, we have like 250,000, I think, CDL holders in the state of Colorado. I said, where are they going to go to work? And he was basically like, oh, don't worry about it. We won't see that happen in 10 years. I go, we're going to see it happen in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? That's the scary part for us.
It's there. In our lifetime, we'll be able to take a ride in autonomous. It'll be mainstream.
Well,
and it'll be mainstream.
Yeah. The Democratic Governors Association had a meeting. I forget where it was recently, and one of the lead sponsors was Waymo, and they got Waymo giving free demonstration rides to all these Democratic governors. I'm like, come on, really? You wonder why? But that's a form of technology that could have a negative impact on the Teamsters Union and many other transportation unions.
Definitely.
Yeah, the bigger trucks, I think they're going to have a hard time doing that. And, to our credit, and you were the chairman of the last freight contracts with ABF and T-Force, they need to come to us before they can implement this technology and utilize it. So that was, a little foresight to say, hey, we want a seat at the table. You can't do this without us. And I think that's important. But you're not going to see those mass changes in the trucking industry. Nobody wants a driverless truck driving around, especially in the city. You may see the trucks have gotten bigger since we started. They get longer. They were 42 feet. Then they were 45,
53,
48. Now they're 53, and they're wider, they're taller, and there's more of them. And life changes, and you have to accept that. But people are not going to accept trucks barreling down the highway without a driver in there.
Well, think about the damage. Not only think about the threat public safety wise, you got a family of 4. And I tell people this all the time. The best computer is a human's instinct and their heart, right? And their mind, right? Not only is it a public safety issue, but think about all the tax dollars that have been invested in infrastructure in this country. When you have trucks platooning, because they will platoon them.
Platoon is what
240,000 pounds. How is that gonna maintain infrastructure in this country? And there's going to be further cost. Be good for our members, right, to work on it. But in the reality, who is going to field the cost for that? It's going to be taxpayers.
Yeah. Well, platooning. Let's explain to our listeners here. It's not a military term. It's it's one truck.
Not a movie.
One truck following close. So you'd have one truck with a driver, and very closely following him or her would be another truck or
3 sets.
3 sets without drivers
At 80,000 a pound without drivers.
So the one up front stops and the other ones don't. Look, I think technology is good in that it aids the human drivers. We all have in our cars, you change lanes, it's buzzing and beeping. You get too close to the person in front of you, it beeps, slows you down. So I think it can enhance the ability of the human driver to be safer. But I don't support the takeover of that, especially on the trucks on the road.
No, it's crazy. I met with one of the lead developers, probably going to be the first American trillionaire. He's a guru of AI, and he sought us out a meeting with us in my office. And it was fascinating because we're on opposite ends of the spectrum on this conversation. But he did say something to me, and he laid it out. He goes, think about a triangle, right? Divide that triangle into 3 parts. You've got CEO, C-suite people. Then you've got white collar people that are accountants, analysts, human resource people, whatever, in that middle layer of management. And then you have, the blue collar worker. And he said, the technology we're developing is going to wipe that middle right out. And that's going to be a huge cost savings to these corporations who will reward Wall Street, right? The stockholders. But he said something interesting. He goes, there's always going to be blue collar jobs. We got to find a way, or you have to find a way to make sure that CEO pay and C-suite pay doesn't take all those profits. He's like, they've got to pay the American worker, which was coming from this person, who I've become, pretty friendly with. It was kind of refreshing to say, all right, he's recognizing, and he's one developing a lot of these technologies and these efficiencies. So you're going to see like a white collar, middle level management probably be effective for the first time ever. And which leads to, where do those folks go? Because AI can't swing a hammer, AI can't plumb a house, AI can't wire a house, right? So are we going to see a resurgence in people that were in white collar, like remember the .com industry, where they start coming to work for companies like UPS, they go into the carpenters union, they go into the operating engineers, wherever they go. Are we going to see trades make a comeback? And that's another conversation for trade schools, funding these. I think
there was a story in the paper just yesterday on it with Ford that he's short 5,000 mechanics and he can't get them from anywhere. And he's saying that was his whole thing. You have to bring the trade schools back to train for these high-paying, good benefit jobs. There's nobody to do them.
Well, I think you got to pay people, number one, too.
Yeah, you got to pay and make it worthwhile. And look, in Suffolk County, we have Suffolk County Community College, and we just broke ground on a new motor school training. And it was, it was financed by all the car dealers. They said we can't find people, so they made a major contribution in funding of that building. So if we can train auto mechanic technicians.
Now we just have to unionize them.
That's generally the UAW has that. Some Teamsters are involved in that.
Right.
But but we do have to unionize and make sure they're paid fairly and get good benefits.
So quick question, both of you. What does November of 28 look like?
November of 2028. Let me see. That would be, I don't know.
Politically,
I think you're going to see a lot what happens next year in the midterm elections.
Who's a Republican candidate for president in 2028?
I like Marco Rubio.
What do you think?
I mean, his name's being mentioned, but, I think the midterms are important. I think if we still see a swing back to the Democrats, it's going to be a problem. But, I think they still have the advantage. But yeah, the vice president seems like he'll be the candidate with Marco Rubio as vice president, maybe. Democrats, it's all over the place there, from AOC to Gavin Newsom. So the names that they're coming up with, I don't know how strong they're going to be or not, and it remains to be seen.
Who do you see as the Democratic candidates for 2028?
I think it's going to swing way to the left. You could see that happening where moderate Democrats are going to be a thing of the past. They are going after any moderate Democrat in the primaries and picking them off. And it's going to be so hard to be in the middle as a Democrat, where I think you see the Republicans moving more towards the middle.
Well, you still got some far-right Republicans that
you do.
Are just as crazy as the far left.
I know. You almost had a fight with one of them on the Senate floor, right?
Yeah, we're friends now.
But now you're friends. See, that's what I'm just saying.
Yeah,
so
little conflict's good once in a while, Kev.
I know all about that.
Yeah, you know.
Good thing we've always got along, right?
So who do you think those candidates are, though, Democratic candidates? You hear Shapiro's name. Well, I like Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, but he's gonna be too moderate.
Yep.
He's gonna be too moderate, and they are gonna go with your friend Gavin Newsom.
My friend.
I always said that.
Oh, your girlfriend, AOC.
Oh, yeah.
What's your relationship with her?
I've met her once in person.
Yep.
And so we're in different ends of the political spectrum, but she is one of those examples of someone who came out of nowhere, like the next mayor of New York City, Mamdani.
Right. Yeah.
She just hit the ground running, stole the primary from a long time entrenched Democrat congressman, and so she was a success story in terms of how do you pick off a moderate Democrat, and that's what happened. And Mamdani did the same thing with Cuomo.
That's something that couldn't have happened years ago.
No, definitely.
You couldn't be unknown and come in, but with the internet today and the grassroots they put out there, it's happening, and people got to wake up to that, because there's no way they could have got elected years ago.
Yeah,
it would take time.
Yep.
Today, perfect example.
All right, last question. If you could have lunch with anybody that's not deceased in the world, who would it be?
That's a good question. Anybody, huh? I think I'd like to meet Donald Trump in person.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. I met him in passing, but have lunch with him. I'd like to see what makes him tick.
How about you, Tom?
I heard your podcast, all week, and I'm thinking, you're going to answer this question, who? And I think as you get older, the people you really want to meet aren't around no more to have lunch with. It's a tough question. I was in Donald Trump's presence, so I have to meet him again. I met him. You look at some weird things. The Pope.
Pope Leo?
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to meet a previous Pope, and I was in the Vatican for I went down there for an International Transportation Federation deal, and I'll tell you, it was one of the most moving experiences of my life, just being able to, and we had, exclusive access to him.
Really?
And it was like shaking his hand. Like, we don't get starstruck because we get to meet a lot of different people, but it was like a moving experience, like probably the top 5 experiences of my life.
Really?
Yeah. I felt like I had complete absolution at that point in time, but it doesn't work that way.
True.
All right, listen, thank you very much for coming on Better Bad Ideas.
That was great.
I truly appreciate both of you, and look forward to the future.
Same here,
Thanks
Sean.
for having
Thank you
us.
very much.